Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week watching one of your favorite streaming shows. And on today's episode, we'll be discussing the latest episode of Your Friends and Neighbors, the Apple TV Plus series, renewed for a third season, preemptively renewed for a third season, even when the second one was just announced or just beginning its rollout. So Apple's very committed to this show, and I guess they should be because the ratings have been very strong, even stronger season 2 versus season 1. Apple is just kind of growing now, so it's not that frequent that you see their shows actually pop up in the top 10, other than like Ted Lasso and, of course, Severance recently, which became the most watched show. But this show consistently in the top 10 on a weekly basis. So definitely a hit for them. Now, how good this is versus last season, of course, is the conversation we've been having all season long. And always in that conversation has been Sona. Sona, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Happy about those Knicks last night. Not as thrilling a Knicks game last night. But that's okay, as long as we got the result we wanted.
Yeah, I've had more than enough nail biting in this Knicks series, I think.
I got a little scared, though, by the way, when they were able to go from, down by the Cavs were down by 18 and then came in within 7. I'm like, oh, my God, they flipped the script here between the one and the other. But then, of course, the Knicks were able to pull it off, or even pull ahead, I should say, at the end. And by the end of this weekend, we'll see the results of this long weekend because of the holiday. We will see the results of their 2 away games, and hopefully they can at least win one of those. Like, I hope. Sona, what are your plans for the long weekend? Is your son off from school today? My daughter's off from school today, off from school on Monday, and off from school on Tuesday.
Mine is not off from school today. Did they just make a long weekend for her, or is there some reasoning behind it?
I think they had an extra snow day also, so they used that. But that was the Tuesday. So I think Friday was just already a long weekend.
Mine is off Monday for the holiday and then off Wednesday for Eid.
Whoa. Okay. Interesting. Is spreading that out.
Yeah. Get back to the routine for one day and then another day off.
You might as well just give them the Tuesday off. That's what I say. Just to make it as inconvenient if you work, right? Like, if you wanted to take a vacation, no, sorry, you can't actually go on vacation for this long weekend because we do want you back on Tuesday, but then you're off on Wednesday. I'm like, all right, people, please work with us, please.
Yeah, pick a lane. Yeah, I agree. So this weekend, we are going to a soccer tournament, and I don't know if you've seen the weather forecast,
yeah,
but it does not look good.
We're going down the shore to open up my wife's family house.
Nice.
And of course, it's going to be pouring rain the entire weekend. But we got a nice day today. They said it was going to rain, and it looks like now we're going to get mostly sun today. So we're going to try to take advantage of it before we go down and basically get cooped up in the house for a couple of days.
Maybe it won't be as bad as they're saying.
You know what? Down there, the wind just blows slightly differently, and it changes all the weather. So we'll hope for the best. A couple of things I wanted to circle back to. Sona, did you finish watching Rooster on? We never circled back to that. We were going week to week on that at one point, and then but the show did wrap up. Has been renewed for season 2 by HBO. Apparently a big hit for them, one of their biggest comedy hits ever. And speaking, of course, Bill Lawrence just in the moment having the magic touch. Of course, Ted Lasso coming back, Bad Monkeys coming back on Apple, and of course, Shrinking has been one of Apple's biggest hits. And of course, now on HBO with Rooster. And the Scrubs reboot, which also just got renewed for a season 2. This guy is more prolific than ever. But are you behind on Rooster? Did you catch up? Where are you?
I am behind on Rooster, and I am dying to catch up. So hopefully I will be able to get to that soon because I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, I won't spoil anything here, but I'll say that the season finale is very well written. And he doesn't always have really solid season finales. I think plot-wise and character-wise, it's a very nice place to end the season. But it's not, honestly, like my main selling point for that show was just how funny it was.
Yeah, and, for sure.
That is probably the least funny episode of the entire season. But also, like I said, really nice character work, very nice place where they leave all the characters. And of course, there's a pretty big cast that they have to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's for a pretty big cast of all very likable cast members with terrific chemistry. So definitely on board for season 2 of Rooster, and we're getting it. So that's great. The second thing I wanted to bring up, Sona, was an email we received.
I love this email.
I love this email too. And I will not name the person who sent the email just in case. But if they're listening and would like to follow up and even get into just some behind the scenes conversation, if it's okay with them, or if they'd like to expand on their previous emails, I'd love to hear back from anybody related to this show or any of the shows we cover here on the podcast. But briefly, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but a listener reached out to us and mentioned that in defense of we were reacting to a negative review we'd gotten about covering Your Friends and Neighbors, and supposedly if we really hated the show, then why were we still covering it? Which is honestly part of the reason I brought it up, was not just to lick my wounds in public, but it was because I did kind of want to explain the fact that I'm really here to have the experience of watching the show for better or worse, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to do here on the show. So just kind of explain myself. But there was something in the review itself, the negative review, that this person had reacted to, where they said that the writers of the show were writing over our heads, that we couldn't understand what they were doing. And then this person wrote an email, was motivated to write an email. And in brief, I'm just going to excerpt slightly from the email. It says, they said that the writing of Your Friends and Neighbors went over your head. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I actually worked on the show, and I think your criticisms are completely justified. And then we said as much while making it. So I did think that was kind of like a little feather in our cap that, we're on to. And by the way, I'll say this 100 times, making a show, making a movie, getting something made and put out there in public is a miracle. It's so difficult. There are so many moving parts. Like someone gets sick, someone doesn't want to come back for the show, the original showrunner or writer leaves. Even when everyone has the best intentions and everybody's on the same page, the pieces just don't come together. So I am not trying to make this sound like this is so easy. How did they screw this up? I know it's hard. And this just speaks to the fact that internally there may have been some conversations among different members of the creative team as to how things would play out in front of the cameras and at the scripting level or wherever that is, which is always the case. That's always the case. But importantly, they mentioned that this was something that was contentious inside, probably something that some different people had different opinions about behind the scenes. And then at the end of the email, they say, with more AI written entertainment on the horizon, it's important to keep things critically about to keep thinking critically about the entertainment we view. This is what keeps it from being mindless consumption. What even would be the point of a TV review podcast if not to critique? Thank you. Keep on nitpicking. So thank you very much. I love this email. And I do hope
so
that
validating.
It is. And by the way, also, of course, we started the Patreon. I'll just do a quick shout out to the Patreon again, which is currently free. Join, and people are having conversations there. And people on the Patreon have been sharing like their little biographies of how they found our show in the first place, and specifically about how they started watching shows they weren't watching before, being more critical about the shows they were watching, or watching movies that I had recommended and appreciating them in a different way. And again, I think that's the point, right? It's not to say that, we want to bash things that we don't like, but to appreciate the things we do like and to, be critical, right? Because, if you are critical about the thing you're consuming, whether it's entertainment or anything else, then ideally you make that product better, right? That's the goal, I think.
This is such a great lead in to this week's episode because I do have some criticisms.
Oh, I so much do have good criticisms.
But I have good things to say as well. I thought this week was the mixed bag.
For sure. Yeah, so let's actually segue into our conversation of the episode. Oh, the first thing I want to bring up, this is going to be something that is going to be it's going to be a positive for the show and then a negative, kind of like our reaction to this episode. So my wife has been catching up on the show. She's now only one episode behind as of yesterday, but now, of course, 2 episodes behind because the new episode has aired. But basically, long and short, it's the funeral episode. Okay. And she watched like 3 or 4 episodes of the show in the past couple of nights. And I was kind of just seeing it in the background, but not really engaging. Like while I was watching the Knicks game, she was watching this. But I did watch the funeral episode, the entirety of it, I'd say 80% of it by her side last night. And what I want to say is I was critical of parts of that episode. I have to say, Sona, for whatever reason, maybe because of expectations or whatever, seeing it a second time, I like everything in that episode worked for me. Even how I thought that the POV was inconsistent, it's actually pretty clever. And I was like, so sometimes we're in Coop's POV, sometimes it's the dad, this ghostly figure. And it wasn't inconsistent the way I described. We literally are in Coop's POV, and then the camera will turn away, and then it'll be the ghost POV. And then we're back in Coop's POV. It's as if he is following his son around and then going on his own journey and then circling back again. So it actually is much more consistent than I had criticized it for. There's a couple of spots where it's a little bit where suddenly they just jump to the women talking upstairs or whatever. But most of it is actually very consistent. And by the way, emotionally powerful. And part of the reason it worked for me emotionally is my wife cried multiple times watching the episode. And that, of course, lead over it gave me an emotional reaction to watching it as well. And honestly, just listening to that Warren Zevon song, which, for some reasons we're kind of sick of hearing Ali sing, but just hearing the lyrics, like when you're just walking around the house cleaning, just think of me sometimes, and smile, like just the beauty of that, the lyrics of that song really got to me the second time around. And it was just way more effective. Like also just the way the bowling alley worked. My wife, for example, used to go bowling with her dad, so that immediately had a trigger for her as well. So all that is to say that this episode, in retrospect, I'm like, wow, this wasn't, I had a lot of critiques about that episode. This almost worked 100% for me second time around. Barney's wife puking on the table, a little bit unnecessary, but
still not great.
Other than a couple of nitpicks here and there, very strong episode of TV, even better than the first time around. So also I'm like, you know what? I think I've been a little hard on this show. And then I watched this episode last night and I'm like, nah.
Oh, that's funny.
All the problems I had are really glaring in this particular.
The irony.
The positives and the negatives. Definitely the negatives here as well. So what was your general impression? You already touched on that. You were a little on and off on this one. What was your general take?
Okay, so my negative impression of it was a decent chunk of this episode seemed to be poor Coop is surrounded by hysterical women that make his life more difficult.
I'm so glad you're going there. I mean, we'll get around to it, but I in my notes at the end of the episode, we'll get to it as we break down the plot. My last note is this show misogynistic?
Yeah, it certainly felt that way last night. I hadn't thought so previously, even though I had complaints about the development and plot lines for the female characters. Last night, it felt almost actively misogynistic.
Sorry, made you laugh out loud.
I did not love that. On the plus side, just talking about overarching themes, I think they did address what we have always discussed should be the heart of this show, which is when is it enough? And how much of your life is being driven by, I'm going to go back to the theme song again, even though I hate that title sequence so much.
So much.
Keeping Up with the Joneses. And Grace really spells it out, right? That they have become accustomed to a certain standard of life and they feel it's impossible to go backwards from that now. And what does that mean for your overall happiness and the choices you make? I thought was good. And also, this is something that I meant to ask you about with the finale of DTF St. Louis, and I never did. But this idea, which was my mistake, I should have made sure I got this into our DTF St. Louis conversation. This idea that is very popular right now of the male loneliness epidemic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think there was an explicit reference towards that. And I think that does have a role here in this plot. I haven't really thought that through so much yet, but I think it's an interesting idea in this context.
I think you make a good point there. And obviously that is central to the theme of DTF St. Louis for sure.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've heard in the culture so many times, like just that Wall Street Journal article, which went viral a few years back, just talking about how all these widowed men and divorced, of course, are literally, and we have a friend of ours, by the way, someone I went to school with, his dad was like in a really bad place. I'm not going to reveal who they are here, obviously, but was in a really bad spot. And just recently has joined like a social group, actually that meets right near where your mom used to live, by the way, when she was living in, after she moved from this town here. And I'm being as vague as possible with all these details. But he now has a weekly group of these men who get together who are later in life, and they go to the museums and they have talking groups and they have an eating group. And anyway, his temperament and everything has just changed radically, which is just fantastic. But it just goes to speak that the culture needed to like come up with solutions for this, because there were so many people who were just alone, right? And I'm sure that the pandemic, this was even before the pandemic, but I'm sure the pandemic just accelerated all of this.
But the counter to that is if you are suffering from that type of loneliness, and I'm not saying this is true or not, it partly is a situation of your own making.
Oh, for sure. It is. Absolutely. I'm not casting blame in that regard. I think that often.
No, I'm not taking a position one way or the other, but I do know that there is this answer to this of like, well, if you weren't such a miserable person to be around, and if you recognize the contributions of, who the person who is now your ex-wife or ex-partner, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation.
Well, I think that is the underlying reality, which is overt in all of these profiles that I've read, that oftentimes these men relied on their wives. And I mean, that's my experience too, right? Like my wife has so many more social connections than I do. And that the social connections I do have for the most part is like a husband within one of this friend group. So if things, if you don't nurture that over time, then, you end up becoming more and more isolated. And there is this reliance on women to keep that social activity alive, which brings me back to wanting to talk about this show, which is, I think, to your point, if they wanted to actually explore that a little bit more, there is an interesting take where, he's gotten divorced. He's already been alienated from his wife. And I think this is underexplored, but it is slightly there, that him left to his own devices, like in that rental house with his family gone, with his sister not there. And maybe this, now that you've brought it up, maybe this is the intention of the show, that him in isolation, he is becoming like the worst version of himself, and in isolation,
self-destructive.
Right, he allows himself to be the worst version of himself because he doesn't have a feedback loop. But now all of a sudden, and maybe this is where the show's trying to show us that he's coming out of this potentially, is that his sister is there living with him. The kids are living there with him, right? So like whether he wanted to isolate or not, he, can't stay isolated. And of course, through his criminal endeavors, he now has this alternate family that is relying on him for, to subsidize them as part of his criminal endeavor. So he's kind of has an alternate family now too. So he can't escape that. But maybe rather than the show being like, wow, what a burden these additional people are, maybe it's saying that, no, he's coming out of this fugue state of misery or self-destruction even because of these connections. And maybe that explains some of I think the worst scene in this whole episode, like the decision he has to come forward and talk to, what's that girl's? Olivia. I was like, Liv. Yeah, Olivia.
But by the end of this episode, the sister's gone and the kids are going to leave.
Right. And he's been absconded as well. So it's like
also, yes, the abduction. Yeah.
So he is isolating again, or potentially he could isolate, although we'll see how that all plays out. That could just be convenience, by the way, too, right? Like if now a lot of shady stuff is going to be happening to him on a regular basis,
no one's around to wonder.
You got to empty out the house so that's not so obvious. All right. As the episode kicks off, we have, what did you think about this? That all of a sudden this lawyer is now Kat, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
But she is now brought in again to defend these two women. And of course, the irony here that Tori and the mom are both in trouble. Tori seems to be at first in bigger trouble, but then she kind of gets off scot-free. And then, of course, that maybe the bigger repercussions are actually still to Mel. And of course, Kat is not his friend. She's like, I'm not billing her. She's my friend. I'm billing you instead. Like as if he doesn't have enough unpaid bills, but that's yet another one. But what'd you think about this dynamic? And I got to tell you, at the beginning, when Tori's giving them a lot of attitude,
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill this girl. But of course, she does finally, to her credit and to the show's credit, she does acknowledge the fact that she did dodge a bullet there as far as her future.
Yeah, I think it was a good scene to have Coop try and finally lay down the law with her and say, listen, this behavior is unacceptable and you've got to pull it together. And I think we saw that Mel appreciated that from
her
him.
look she gives him. Mm-hmm, I agree.
Yeah. That finally he was acknowledging that this is unacceptable and acting accordingly, because she probably feels like she's been screaming into the void somewhat, right? So I did like that. But yes, very frustrating to watch Tori's attitude. And I still think we are spending too much time with some of these characters.
Yeah, the younger kids in general. Going back to our Patreon, the conversation on there of like, yeah, I'm sick of the kids here. I'm like, yes, we agree that that kind of they spend too much time on that. And hopefully this is more about, or I should say, the show cares more about how that is yet another inconvenience imposition on Mel trying to be the rule follower in this circumstance. And we can save the weird rule following mentality of Mel for later on when we get to the criticism of like, what is this saying about women? Because my personal opinion, by the time you get to the end of the episode, it starts feeling like bitches be crazy is basically the philosophy of the show.
Well, especially
yeah.
When Coop tells her at the end, I'm really worried about you.
Yeah.
Dude, you've been breaking into the neighbors' houses and stealing stuff for kind of no good reason. And you're worried about her? You got your own problems.
He is worried that he and his loved ones, their lives might be in danger given his current activities. And he's telling Mel that she has a problem.
Yeah, get your crap together, lady.
Which again, I mean, like maybe we're jumping to the critique, but it's so overt. We have to touch on it maybe more than I was introducing it early on. Like you mentioned, it's the fact that Coop is doing things that could potentially get him killed, get the family killed, get him in jail for the rest of his life, destroy the finances and besmirch his dad's name, everybody's names. Like this could be disastrous. To Nick, potentially, there could be spillover to Barney for sure. This could be, Elena could lose her citizenship. Who knows, right? So huge world-shattering consequences to every character we've pretty much seen in this show. Even Allie, who's dependent on him to a large extent for her well-being, and the kids, of course. Everybody we've seen, all impacted by his decisions. But Mel is being too aggressive with the neighbors, and that is the problem. And this show seems to be like, wow, what's wrong with Mel? She's out of control. And because
listen, it is slightly unhinged. I'm not saying that this is normal behavior,
I agree,
but in the grand scheme of what we know of what's going on, as we've discussed, this is kind of a weird subplot that we don't care for. I don't think if the intention is to show that Mel is reaching a breaking point or has reached it and broken, I don't think this was the right way to do that.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, let's circle back to that first scene and we'll dig into all these things a little more as we go through it. But in that opening scene, I think it's supposed to be comedic that, he's yelling at Tori, telling her, finally putting his foot down. Mel's appreciative of that. They say, Tori, go wait by the car. She storms out of the room. And then Kat's like, well, let's talk about you, Mel. And it's like, you have to go and apologize. And she's like, screw that. I'm not going to go apologize. And then he's like so frustrated with her. But exactly to that point, she is just completely irrational, where she is, again, questioning how well written and represented this character is. That, I mean, this is intentional, by the way. It's not like they're accidentally doing this, where she is scolding Tori for not taking the deal or not being appreciative of it. And then even more minor in her regard and having much higher consequences to her, right? She could actually go to jail potentially and have a criminal record, as opposed to Tori that probably have these things expunged, or at least has that option. And she's just like, I'm not doing that. And it's like the definition of entitlement there. But she's criticizing her kids for being that way. And I'm like, pot to kettle, right? But anyway, so it just seems completely irrational. And like I said, the show is aware of this. It's trying to make a comedic point there. But in the moment, it just irritated me like immensely.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. That pretty irritating the way that all plays out. There is a nice narration, though, by the way, that I think we can all empathize with when he sees his daughter by the car and he's remembering. It's actually really beautifully written, by the way, this whole section where he's remembering the day she was born. And of course, that immediately, hits me. And then he sees her as a little girl. And, and of course, we have this experience all the time, right? Where I look at my daughter and she's a tween. And I'm so amazed, by the way, like she just did something recently where it's the way that she was able to like not get caught up in some drama. And I was like, wow, look at her navigating this on her own and just so impressed. And of course, but also like the loss of that little child that she was before. And, the irritation of her becoming a tween and all the emotions and all the,
of course,
comparison that occurs at that period of time. So all those things, that are like PTSD for me, but of course, impressed by her, all those things in this moment of this beautiful narration, I thought. So redeeming things after this pretty annoying opening scene. Do you want to say anything about that before we move on to the next really annoying scene?
I agree with you. That was very sweet.
Of course, the next really annoying scene is he shows up. Man, did this scene really make me mad? I think it's, I was going to say, I think it's necessary. It is not necessary. And it seems absolutely insane where you have Coop showing up at Liv's house. First of all, poor Liv thinks that he's there for a booty call. And she's kind of hoping that it will be because she's in the dry spell or so. But she's like, hey, now it can actually happen without anyone getting in trouble. But that's not why he's there. He's there because he needs her. He needs this someone who's much more junior to him to be like, hey, look, I'm going to tell you everything I'm doing and you need to do something about this. Not me need to do something about this. You need to do something about this. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to tell you all this information. And like now you're going to be like compelled by your moral codes and by your ethical requirements of your job to now do something about it. And she's just like, this is, at least I loved her reaction to it, being like, I don't want to know about this. You did this to us. If this all comes out, guess what? It passed the sniff test. It will again. And you're the one who's going to take the blame for all of this. And of course, you have to assume him being more experienced than her knows under it all that is exactly the blame is going to fall on him in the end. And he's the one who's going to face the worst consequences. They'll lose money, of course, and it could be even worse than that. They can lose most of their liquidity. But at this point, it's going to happen. Like him coming to her at this point is like, this is going to destroy your finances right now if we do this audit, because we're already past the point. Like we've already merged our funds. So you're already going to face all these bad consequences, but now you got to do the right thing. Not me, you. And I'm like, wow, like where is Coop coming from? Like what's his mentality in this moment that he thinks that this is a good idea? It's insane.
Well, this is a strategy, right? To somehow get him out of this mess without taking the fall for being the person who discloses the illegality of the whole arrangement. So I do understand it on paper as a plan, but yeah, he's essentially dumping his problem onto somebody else and saying, it's your problem now too.
But importantly, it's your problem now too, because what she says to him is absolutely true, where on the one hand, it's like, yes, now it's my problem too, so that you don't have to go and say that, there's this dangerous actor, like, it's not Coop who's potentially, antagonizing Ashe and getting into trouble for it because he's afraid of that. However, think about it. Like she says, the whole OFAC violation and that he was aware of this going into it. Yeah. And he's telling her that he was aware of it. So if she truly goes forward and says everything she knows, she'll be like, and he was in on it and he knew from the beginning. He says, she says to him, you right now in this moment, even if everything goes and I do what you're telling me to do, you're going to jail for 10 years. So the point is that, like, what is Coop's plan? Like, if Coop gets what he wants at this moment, do you think Coop in this moment, and maybe he's just, again, I just think about how he's almost sociologically, he has some serious mental issue, because think about his circumstance here, where if he gets what he wants, he's almost certainly going to jail. And does he seem like someone who is like preparing to go to jail? Like, is he getting his affairs in order for his family to be prepared for him to be out of it for 10 years, or to leave Barney and Nick and Elena and the revelations that he's a thief and that money is in Nick's business? Does this look like someone who is ready for the consequences of his actions? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
A lot of this show doesn't make sense.
But what do you think? Is he in denial, you think? That he thinks that if he he brought the money to them and misrepresented the relationship to that cash so that it would go under, like, he, put them in this circumstance intentionally. Exactly. His strategy was to do it in a way where they wouldn't do a deeper audit because of that, whatever the amount of time that he was managing the money, whatever that window was, however it was manipulated. I forget the details of it. But the point is, he knew, and if that information that he's just shared with Liv comes to the light, what's going to happen to him? Like, it doesn't, I don't understand. And more importantly, whatever's going to happen to him is going to be catastrophic. And I do not see anything in his behavior right now that he does not think that after she goes and opens that can of worms, he's not just going to be golfing and, trying to break into people's houses and steal their baseball cards. Like, the next day, it's just bananas.
I don't think he's in denial about it. I think he does understand it, but I also think, as we've discussed, part of this show is about whatever self-destructive tendencies he has that make him make these decisions. I also think, to be fair, that this show does involve a certain amount of necessary hand-waving to go along with the plot.
Right.
And I actually am okay with that part. I don't need all the I's dotted and T's crossed as far as whatever financial crimes are going on, or why people don't have security cameras in their homes, or whatever it may be. I will suspend my disbelief for the sake of enjoying the show. So I'm kind of okay with it.
What's strange about it, though, is that this is such a self-inflicted wound.
They all are.
Because, true. But I mean, overtly to have this scene where he tells this to Liv is such a strange decision at this point in the show, because he could have a conversation with Barney where he says, Barney's telling him that I think these people might be dangerous people. Like, he has Ashe's, there are people in Ashe's orbit that have been disappeared. Why wasn't that research done earlier, Barney? But second of all is, okay, we now have this information. And then he says, I have to go and turn state evidence or something and reveal this information. I don't want you guys to be in danger. And Barney says, you will go to jail. Are you willing to make that decision? So my point is, you can still have this moment where you are supposed to be empathizing that Coop is not like a total sociopath. He is starting to see that his friends might be at risk. So you can have the same effect without him going and like dragging people in. And because then it makes you wonder, like I said, one, is Coop naive to think that he's going to get away with this when obviously everything she says is true? Or two, the other way to read it is like, is this just the end of his self-destruction, where it's just like, well, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus and take all the blame and go to jail, because then I just don't have to deal with this midlife ennui that he's experiencing, I guess, right? Is that what we're supposed to read here? Okay,
well, another suggestion, which is kind of not in the realm of the world of the show, is I know last season I thought that they had inserted Liv's character in such a way that I fully expected her to come back in the end and have some relevance, because why do we keep seeing her otherwise? And she did not. But maybe this season, he's telling her this because of some future plot development that will happen that necessitates that she have this knowledge. So maybe it's a plot mechanism.
Yes. I mean, yes, that's a good point. that's one where he brings her in, and then maybe she comes up with a workaround on her own that gets him out of this. And there's some way where they can restructure the deal and, somehow segregate the money without having too much blowback on everybody else. And that, of course, would still put Coop in danger with Ashe, etc., if Ashe finds this out. But you make a good point that could be a way where she comes up with a way to unwind this, because he obviously would make no sense for him to walk in there and be like, by the way, that $400 million, just take it back out again. They're like, what are you talking about? You just signed the papers. Yes, that. So yeah, it would be bizarre to do that on the show. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a way for someone inside who can do something about it to be involved without. But yeah, she's not going to go and inform to the feds.
Right.
Most likely. I say
because,
most likely
to be honest, I still don't get the relevance of her character.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know she set something into motion in the very early episodes of the first season. Her existence did anyway. But after that, I haven't really understood why she's still around.
Well, I mean, that's meta commentary on the way the show is made, but potentially is that I feel like the story might have changed over the course of the season, because obviously she was all over the first half of last season, where she was kind of inside and leaking information to Coop. And then when the story had to resolve around the murder, of course, the most of the back half of season 1 was all about that. And all the other characters just kind of fell away. And that included her. And then we're like, well, I guess they won't be bringing her back for season 2 because she kind of served her purpose, whatever their original intention was. And they have brought her back. And yeah, you might be right. There could be something that happens in season 3 or towards the end of this season where she's essential to it.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we just have to find out about. I'm second guessing myself because I was going to say that she obviously hasn't told anybody. But then there is a question, we can save it for the end, as to who is abducting him there at the end of the episode.
Sure.
Maybe, it could be the government that did hear from her. And now they're like, we've been trying to get to Ashe for years. And you have an in now. So we're going to set him up in some way. And if you don't, then you're going to take the fall for all of this, right? So this could all be kind of just setting up that potentiality. And me trying to rationalize this moment is a waste of time because it's just to set that up, right? So maybe I'm spending too much time talking about this. But I got to say, the way they write the Coop character is constantly astounding to me. He has this interior voice, and his behavior on the show just it's contradictory to it continuously. Some more interesting details here that I found this interesting is the kind of trap that this love bombing by Ashe has done to Sam and her trajectory here. And earlier on, we see the fact that, she's working on this big project and she's brought this couple into it. And that, of course, is kind of her in to the social group again. And when she's thinking about breaking it off with Ashe, she just kind of hints at it. And it's really interesting, the performance here, because it's not only that they're saying hey, why would you leave him? He's good looking and he's rich. Those are the words they say, but there's something about their behavior, the bristling at it, where it's I think we're supposed to infer, and I think Sam infers that you lose your entree to this back into this world if she loses him. So now she's kind of trapped again with her relationship, because it's not only the fact that he on paper is the best option for her and maybe is the only option for her given her history, but it's also this newfound popularity with this friend group might go away if she doesn't have him hanging on her arm. All that is to say that I thought that was interesting, kind of a subtle trap that she's found herself in. A gilded cage, so to speak. While that's interesting, what's not so interesting is the whole Mel talking to the neighbor finding out she's a therapist. They want to take away her license, which of course is so vindictive. And what is up with this dog, by the way? How is this dog what can't she do anything other than these petty? Can't she just have a tort against and just take pictures? I mean, she has the dog. She has cameras, like we talked about earlier. She has cameras on her property just to catch the dog pooping on it. And can't she just present this in court and be your dog can't poop on my lawn anymore? And that's it. Don't kill the dog. Don't top over, but dump over any porta potties. Just take them to court before they take you to court, because now they're taking her to court to try to take away her license. Not that she's using it, but regardless.
Yeah, I think the dog has become, or was intended to be, a device to show how irrational she is in this stage of her life. Yeah. Because of perimenopause? I don't know. I'm trying to link all these things together.
I mean, I was thinking the same thing, that this is all, I literally said that as I was watching this, like this is all being tied back to her perimenopause. However, to the show's credit, later on, she's saying like, I don't even know why I did what I did with Nick. So this isn't just the perimenopause. This has been going on for years now at this point. But maybe the perimenopause was
can
happening.
Last 10 years.
How's that?
Perimenopause can last 10 years.
That's what I was saying. Maybe it's perimenopause all the way down. Perimenopause all the way down.
Could be.
Everything on this show, maybe that's the missing link. Everything on this show was caused. The first domino to fall was perimenopause.
In defense of perimenopause, all of the women that I am socially connected to are in, not all, but many, the vast majority are in the same stage of life. And to my knowledge, none of us are doing things that are at this level of irrationality.
Yes, pretty much everybody in our social circle, when they talk about like what estrogen dosage they're taking, etc. Like, so everybody's in treatment for perimenopause at this point. And as far as I know, none of them have turned to crimes or murder yet. But they, hey, we might all be living in this world and just not aware. That's why I have to get cameras installed next week.
There you go.
I'm smart enough to get cameras installed because these menopausal women are trying to break into the house when we're not looking, or their husbands. Anything you want to mention that we have as far as the Allie and Coop and the mom meeting here? Of course, this awkward meeting. Of course, this is very shortly after the father's passed away. They're not having a good time at this. And what do you think is happening to Allie here? Of course, if we talk about Allie here briefly, there's that initial conversation with Coop. She has this nervous breakdown. Not really, maybe I'm overstating it, but she has some kind of really negative reaction in school, and she ends up walking out and getting fired. And then she moves out of Coop's house, where I guess she feels like she doesn't want to be playing that role anymore. Although I hope the rent is cheap, and I don't know where she's going to be living in this area anyway, considering the amount of rents, I would assume. And she's now just working part-time, performing at the bar again, I would assume. I mean, I know you don't love the Allie storyline, but
I don't love it. I continue to not love it. I guess the point here, I am definitely guessing, is that while she's presenting herself as actually being quite together and saying that everybody is overreacting to her showing emotion over her dad passing and feeling defensive that she's not allowed to show any emotion, her actions of like just walking out on her job make us think that actually she is not okay. And her pulling away is a sign that something bad is going to happen. Right? Is that what we're supposed to take from it?
I assume. I just read mostly as maybe because of the passing of her dad that she now is feeling this whole idea. Like, here she is in this classroom. These kids are obviously not passionate about the music. And that moment when she kind of turns in the classroom, she realizes what she's been spending her time doing just to have these kids robotically play this song. I assume that she just felt like that was like a waste. But I mean, that's a theme of this show as well, right? That how many times are people going to be like, I don't want to do my 9 to 5 that pays the bills. And that could be like Tori, I don't want to do the regular thing. It's Coop. It's Mel, right? Who's just like not working anymore, not writing either. She's not doing anything at all. Everybody's like in these like little rebellions against like just doing what you need to do to pay the bills. And I don't know where this is literally nearly, I mean, Barney too, right? Doesn't want to go work for his dad and make a salary that he wants the money, but then he doesn't want the strings attached. And everybody's kind of trying to make these compromises or refusing to make those compromises. So that's a weird motif on the show. And it just seems to be like everyone's frustrated by it, but it doesn't seem to have a real point of view about it.
Yeah, I think though everybody else is managing to go through the motions and then act out in their free time.
Right.
Whereas she just walked out on a class of people. It's not even like she walked out during lunch and never didn't come back. Like she walked out in the middle of the class.
Maybe it's her perimenopause kicking in. We don't know yet.
It must be.
And of course, as I mentioned already, we have the next scene is where we have Ashe love bombing Sam. This was kind of creepy, right? This whole, you show up at the house, you don't want me to meet your kids, so I'm now just going to impose this on you. Again, like really just the gilded cage situation. And it's so crazy, right? It's like, I brought someone here to make sushi for us all tonight. Like it is so over the top. For me, for my taste, this is too much. Like they could have, you don't need the sushi chefs there, right? Like this guy shows up and is just playing with your kids and against your will. That is creepy enough. I don't need anything more beyond that.
Yeah, especially when she had previously said, right, that she doesn't want him to meet her kids.
Yeah, when he bought the drones, they ended up flying the drones themselves because.
So it's really presumptuous and invasive, I think, to override her explicit statement that she does not feel that they're ready to do that.
Yeah, it just, for me, this was unnerving. And maybe you start to see more the less appealing aspects of Ashe, the manic aspects of him, the threatening aspects of him. So of course we're going to start seeing him in a much more villainous role here by the end of the season, which is a less interesting version of him, to be honest. But nonetheless, I thought it again, the thing that works on the show for me, surprisingly, is this representation of Sam being given too much of what she should want. And of course, that in and of itself being a problem. By the way, going back to the theme of like, everyone's like given the thing that they're supposed to want. And why can't they just be happy and do it? It's across the board, right? It's like Mel has her house paid for. She doesn't even have to actually work. She's not happy with that. And, Barney has this luxury job and he can collect a big salary and just has to kind of suck it up. He can't do that. And Coop was not able to do that in his previous career. And Sam, of course, now in the situation as well. But it's almost to a character having this experience of like, you could go with the flow. And of course, Allie now walking out on her job. So it's just like, that's not a stressful job. As a matter of fact, the kids want her to do even less. Like they're totally fine with her playing Amadeus and then just learning some chords. And they'll pay her salary, but she's not satisfied with that. And I think that's an interesting thing that the show's trying to say. Maybe that will be thematically rich by the end of the season, but at this point, it just seems like it is being raised without having like a real point of view about it. Like, I don't know if the show is saying like, you know what? Sometimes you just kind of have to suck it up and do a job you don't love because that's how you pay the bills. And you have to find pleasures in the way you can and, change the system from inside or whatever. Or you could just be a baby and storm out. And everyone's just doing that, right? Like Coop's just like, I don't need money. Oh, actually, I'll just steal it from my neighbors. Like, I'm not sure that's the right solution either. But do you think the show has a point of view on any of this?
I'm thinking. I think it's tempting to think of this all as kind of privileged people problems.
Yeah.
But then I think with what we know about the characters, while the actions are analogous, they have different drivers. Whereas with Allie, we think it could be mental illness.
Right.
And then with Mel, it's perimenopause. It's always perimenopause. With Coop, feels like midlife crisis that's taken a left turn into a different kind of midlife crisis. So,
but it could be his hormones too, right? Maybe everyone just needs hormones.
Could be. So I don't know. Sam's framing people. I don't know. I'm not sure what the idea is or what the through line is here.
Maybe there is something thematic here that I'm not picking up on, because I do find it interesting that like Coop being frustrated with Allie and people being frustrated with Mel and the women in that social group telling Sam, why aren't you happy with the relationship you're in? Come on, you should be happy. So everybody is unhappy in their circumstance, but judging everybody else. Because now I'm thinking about the scene in the gym where Coop is talking to Barney and telling him that this is the confrontation I had with Liv, and here's the situation, and things that could be scary. And Barney's like, look, you don't win by doing any of this. Leave it alone. And then Coop throws it back in his face, going like, well, this is the only option I have right now. You have options. You can go work for your dad, which of course gets the whole fight that he has with Grace because Grace announced that to Coop and she's not happy about that. But more importantly, it is this funny point that everyone's like, can't you just don't look a gift horse in the mouth? But everyone's doing that. Like Mel is not happy with her life, but is looking at Tori and saying, can't you just go with the flow? And everyone's criticizing everybody else for just not going with the flow. So maybe there is something being said there, right? That you look at someone else's circumstances and be like, they should be happy with what they have. And then we are not happy with what we have, right? So maybe there is something a little more rich there than I'm giving it credit for. And if everyone went on hormone therapy in their midlife, everything will be solved. Maybe there'll be an ad. It's good. Too bad Apple doesn't run ads other than like, of course, putting their own technology in all these shows. I'm sure you've noticed that. But other than advertising their own hardware in these shows, except for Severance, which got an exemption for that, by the way. But other than that, everybody uses Mac hardware in all of their shows as advertisement. But if they did have ads like on HBO, like when we saw like the Peyronie's disease medication during DTF St. Louis, they could have an ad here for like hormone therapy, right? Like Roe.
For sure.
Okay, another underserved character this whole entire season. Of course, we have to spend a little bit of time on Elena, just the show reminding us that, she has this threat, this $50,000. There's so much of this show that could be resolved with like, I don't know, maybe I'm just nitpicking again, but you think about the fact that Coop could just say, hey, to Ashe, hey, I need you to front me X number of thousands of dollars and everything will be okay. But I guess that makes sense that Coop doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that he's made a mistake and that he can't pay the bills. So a lot of this is about everyone getting into more and more trouble unaware. They're not even aware of this because of Coop's inability to A, go with the flow, like I mentioned before, but B, just sell the car, get a less expensive, like don't.
You're really hung up on the car.
Well, I mean, yes, because the car is expensive, of course. The car he's driving right now is even more expensive, by the way, right? Because he's still driving Ashe's car around, which is odd. He has his own car. Why does he got to drive Ashe's car?
I don't think that much time has elapsed.
I guess it is more convenient, like going to the court versus the sports car because it's roomier.
I feel like he came home on a Saturday night and the hearing is Wednesday. So they mentioned
this is just days later. Yeah. So they're probably meeting with the lawyer like on Monday.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Of all the women here in the show, I really liked Grace's character in last week's episode. Is definitely my favorite of all the Grace episodes. How did you see her in this particular episode? The way that, of course, she's here. Barney has seen her pushing him to go work for her dad in the most negative way possible. Who are you empathetic with in this particular conversation?
Both of them, actually. I could definitely see both sides. And one thing I was thinking about after the episode is how much our decisions are driven by our children. I don't know for Barney and Grace specifically, but I know for me, once my child has become accustomed to certain things, I would have a very hard time then taking those things away and explaining the reasons for that. And I don't think I have a particularly spoiled child, although he is bougie because we as a family like nice things. But I feel like if you're going to make a drastic lifestyle change, you got to do it before the kid is aware enough to know what
that's true.
Like that's the time to downgrade everything. I think it would be very hard. So I kind of understand the handcuffs of the situation of like, we opted into this lifestyle and this level of wealth, not just for us, but for our kids. And now how can you downgrade that? I think that is tough. So I sympathize with Grace there, but I really also sympathize with Barney saying it feels like she doesn't believe in him.
Right. I mean, and it's an interesting push-pull, right? Because the reality is that to believe in him, to say I can be my own man is one thing. But then, of course, where do you set that threshold, right? Because if you say like, I can be my own person and I can build something on my own and be able to support this family, but then the expectation is that the family needs $500,000 a year, well, then that's a huge threshold to clear. Like who's going to be And there are very few people, maybe not in this show, but very few people in the world that can just say, I'm going to be, just manage my friend and family's finances and be able to support this kind of lifestyle, which of course may very well to your broader point, I should say, that Grace, of course, was also raised with incredible wealth. So he, of course, wanted to impress. I'm sure this is all me writing the subtext, but of course that, he maybe felt like he wasn't worthy of this girl who's been raised inside of this very luxurious, opulent, and rich family. So he has a chip on his own shoulder that she hasn't put there. So I totally agree, by the way. The reason this scene works well is because that there's all these unspoken things that are happening within the couple, which of course is always what happens, but they have their own motivation and they're reading things differently. And yeah, so this is actually a realistic, one of the few scenes here that actually worked very well in this episode, because it's completely how these things actually work. She actually thinks she's helping Barney by giving him this option or pushing this option because he's too proud to do it on his own. And he's seeing it as a betrayal. So it's a really interesting dynamic. And then we head over to, we're going to go to the court hearing with Tori. First question I have here is Mini Coop here. Have they never taken this kid? Doesn't he have a permit?
I know. Yeah.
He doesn't know to stop at a stop sign. And
yikes. Maybe
he's just too heavy on the brakes, which is totally true, by the way. I remember teaching my nephews to drive. And when they first start touching the brake and you're and they slam on the brakes and they're 15 feet away from the stop sign. I'm yes, I've had that experience. But it seemed like he didn't know to stop at the stoplight. Yeah. He seemed really inept at driving. He is going into oncoming traffic. I mean, I know the car's big, but you know how the steering wheel works, right? I would hope. In the midst of all this, by the way, what did you make of the conversation that Coop has with Ashe? I'm curious to know what they're trying to set up there, just for the fact that, of course, we have had multiple times in this very episode and the last episode where Ashe was seen as a very threatening figure, but he comes back and he's like, look, I didn't want that to come off as hard as it looked last week. This is just an offer I'm making to you. We're still friends. It's interesting to have that scene there because it's not a necessary scene unless there is some, either that he's sincere about that or if there's some additional manipulation going there. But did you have an opinion on that at all? Why they're having Ashe kind of try to mend the offenses with Coop here at this moment? Is he afraid that he's going to turn him in? I mean, I think at this point, like I said, Coop is so enmeshed in this, I don't think he needs to pressure him in any other way. Maybe
it's to make us question Ashe's real motivations. And is he being sincere here, or is he just trying to do a little bit of damage control? And I think that's kind of consistent with the scene with Sam.
Yes.
Where we wonder, is he just overexcited about his relationship with Sam and wants to have this big gesture? Or, I mean, he says, you were freaked out about the FBI thing. I was kind of trying to make things better. But I think there is an interpretation of it that is more controlling and manipulative rather than earnestness over trying to make it right with this woman that he likes a lot.
Yeah, what's odd about it is, depending on the intentions, I should say, it's not necessarily odd, is looking at Marsden's performance, right? Marsden does not seem there's a version of this performance with Sam and with Coop where there's something menacing and he's just kind of the shark smile, right? But there seems to be he really, and this could be his own pathology, even if he is being threatening, there's this real need in him to be liked. So it could just be that. It could be that he is just as nefarious as you think, but he is just actually still wants to be the good guy, right? So it could just be that he's trying everybody to see him as a nice guy, even as he is a predator. So yeah, it could be that, or it could be because it makes me think, this is part of the reason that I'm not sure that it's Ashe at the end that might be abducting Coop or threatening him in some way, because maybe he is trying to, even though he may be a very shady character, maybe he is trying to be a nice guy, even as he's doing these nefarious things. And there could be other things at work here. We could speculate on that maybe at the end of the episode. Okay, very funny. This whole sequence, by the way. So Terrible planning, by the way, that Coop is now trying to get in. Luckily, we get at least one more theft in this whole entire season of the show, where Coop is trying to break into this guy's house. I honestly didn't remember these people if it wasn't for the previously on. His wife's an influencer, and he has paid $100,000 for some kind of philanthropic event. And this is actually, even some of the commentary here is pretty intriguing because it's true of this influencer culture. You think about these like famous people who go to the Academy Awards and then get those gift bags, and they're wearing these like incredibly expensive jewelry that they get to keep. But it's just like to promote that so that it goes viral, so that people who can't afford the jewelry will want to buy it, or the purse or the shoes or whatever it is. So it's this weird feedback loop. And of course, those people, you have to assume these influencers that get handed these incredibly expensive things, that is actually, as I was watching this episode, I was thinking, this is like a very rich vein to mine across the board. Can you imagine all these influencers who get given these things that they don't know the value of just to wear them or promote them on their videos, and then are just socked away in a drawer somewhere? He could go into those people's houses and take half the crap that they get and sell it, and that probably would go unnoticed. So I thought that was actually maybe something they should investigate, and it would actually say something about our culture in the moment as well. But more entertaining, of course, is that they get into a fight in the car because the husband says that, you're trying to dress like a 25-year-old, which she immediately takes as an affront to her actual age. And this means that Coop gets trapped inside the bathroom with the ghost of his dad. And the way he escapes when he gets this message from his dad that it's time to go, I thought was hilarious. That he's just like walks out the door and they're in the middle of this fight and somehow don't see him the whole entire time. This could be the stupidest thing this show's ever done. I actually thought it was very fun.
I agree with you. I enjoyed this a lot. And the discussion about the internal monologue about jumping out the window and how when he could jump out the window, he didn't need to jump out the window. I liked all of it.
Oh my God. That's another thing that I empathize with so many times. Like now being an older dad, there are so many times when it's like, whatever, like I climb a fence and hop onto the other side. And like now I'm like, I'm going to walk around because I don't know if I can get back up. Like, I don't know if my knees will take the shock if I try to climb this fence. So it happens to me like on a daily basis, especially the knees with him. Not that he's saying the back yet. The back's not a problem necessarily for me, at least not anymore. But the knees, I'm always like, oh man, I don't know if my knees can take this tomorrow, if I'll be able to stand up if I overdo it. We just went to Great Adventure last week. And yeah, the rides are much more terrifying. Worth it older.
You're on there as a middle-aged person going, this isn't safe.
Well, Kim wouldn't even go on the rides because she goes, my bones are fused in my inner ear. I can't ride these rides anymore.
What?
That was her theory, that her bones and her ears are fused together.
Is that a symptom of perimenopause?
It could be. I don't know. Maybe she would know better than I. And then we get towards the end of the episode. As I mentioned, Allie has stormed off, and we can touch on that a little bit. She eventually is going to, that night, she's moving out of the house. Like you said, it's going to be an empty house, so that's more problematic for Coop. Or it could just be convenience, right? Like empty out the house so that they can abduct them for a couple of days and no one asks any questions. So it could just be convenience, but it is interesting going back to your idea of like these men being lonely later in life, that it is kind of representing that to some extent. And of course, also Mel is coming home. What is she listening to? There's a song on the radio. I can't remember.
Oh, was it Little Miss Can't Be Wrong?
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, exactly. Is Tori Little Miss Can't Be Wrong? I don't know.
She has that attitude.
For sure. And she runs the dog over. Oh, before then, by the way, she does have this. This is a nice moment before Mel has her downfall here at the end of the episode. But I don't want to forget this. Of course, that Tori goes to court, and I honestly thought that she was going to, blow this up in some stupid way. Coop does get there just in time to be, maybe a minute or two late after just walking out of the fight. And Tori actually does realize that she's dodged this bullet. And of course, she immediately has to go and run into Mel's arms, which I thought was like a really nice payoff for Mel, given what she's gone through.
I agree. It was very sweet.
But perimenopause strikes again. Although, honestly, her running over the dog, not her fault. But this is literally, she just had the call with her lawyer telling her that things are going to be much worse for her. This is terrible that she's like said, oh, I know how to find a therapist. Don't worry about that. I am a therapist. The fact that the neighbors are now trying to go after her license is like incredibly pompous and rude of them, obviously. But also, like, why are you sharing all this information with your neighbors? Just.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, she does get home, and not because of perimenopause, just because of the construction trucks being parked in front of her house again. She swings around. By the way, our neighbor right now took their steps apart, and coming home from work for me or dropping off my daughter or whatever is exactly this. I have to like basically go blind and then curve around the construction vehicles to like the narrow path into my driveway. So if there's a dog sitting there, or by the way, not a dog, the neighbors' kids leave their bicycle there. I come around the corner, almost smash into the bicycle. If the kid is standing there, I might almost hit
Yikes.
them, right? So anyway, it's not her fault what happens here. But of course, they're going to...
You can relate.
I can relate. I can, despite complaining about
before the grace of God.
Exactly. If there was a child on their bicycle in my driveway, they would be dead right now. So,
oh my gosh.
So given my critique of this episode, I sympathize with with Coop's knees. I sympathize with this circumstance here. But all that is to say that, she's and Sam just shows up. She just showed up to apologize or whatever it was, and happens to be there. And Sam's like, hey, if I know how to do anything is covering up a murder and making it look, maybe we can make it look like the dog committed suicide. Maybe I could flip the script a little bit versus my last cover up.
Well, I actually thought that she was going to volunteer to take the fall.
I thought the exact
for killing the dog, which would have been poetic in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I thought that's what she was going to do, and I thought that would be great, that she could prove to Mel, the apology. By the way, again, just having seen that funeral episode and seeing the end of the previous episode where Sam and Mel have that really good scene when they're on the basketball court in Nick's basement, and they have it all out. And she says, how I feel so terrible, and I feel like a terrible person, and she's basically trying to make amends to Mel. That I completely agree. It would have been such poetic justice for her to be like, you're going to call the cops, and you're going to say that we went out and that I was driving home because we went out for drinks or whatever. You and I drove your car, and I hit the dog. And then she would take the blame for it, and it would be an accident, and it wouldn't ruin her life, and Mel would be off the hook for this. But no, they're like, let's go bury a body. I'm like, okay. And hey, people, where's the sprinkler? You got to know these basic. Where the hoses are in the lawn. Don't start digging where the sprinklers are. Not that I would actually expect Mel to know that, honestly. But
okay, first of all, I know I just said I'm willing to do a lot of hand waving here, but this is where I'm a little caught up. Did they damage the sprinkler? And if so, did they fix it? Is the dog just stopping the leak? Like, I don't understand.
I have all the same questions, but that is something that's where you're hung up. That's where I was just like, okay, that's not important to the plot anymore.
Yeah, when it feels like there's going to be some sort of structural issue if you don't actually repair a leak. So that was number one. Number two, these feel like the type of people that would chip their dog.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, that's a good point. And they got to turn up in the lawn, and there's got to be
that's going to be a problem. Then again, nobody has a camera, despite a rash of break-ins. I don't know. Yep. Maybe not. But it feels like they would chip their dog.
Yes, and by the way, you make a really good point. I hadn't thought about the chipping of the dog, but
air tag on the collar, especially when he wanders.
That may very well be. There might be a reveal here yet to come that Mel is going to still take the blame for all this. It would be funny, ironic here at the end of season 2, where Coop, of all the crimes he's committed, that if he gets off the hook here and Mel goes to jail for killing the dog. It seems considering how relaxed they are afterwards, just like talking about this, it seems like they have resolved this issue. But I don't think it's going to be a plot point. But you make a really good point. Like, yeah, what if they just have a GPS on the collar, right? Like they could track him down to her lawn. And it's not like he's dead in the middle of the lawn and they're like, how did this happen? Obviously, someone buried him.
And the history of everything that's going on. If the dog is missing, she is suspect number one.
Oh, they immediately go look on her lawn. If they find a mound of dirt, they're probably going to ask questions immediately. Again, I don't know if this is going to pay off in some really dumb way where potentially she goes to jail, but I agree that the Sam taking the blame would have been poetic closure. It would have brought the women back together in a way, which, by the way, they're like buddy again because they buried this dog together. But it would have been cleaner.
Nothing will bond you like burying a body.
That's true. That's for sure. You're bonded for life, even if it's just a dog.
Well, I did really like the scene between the two of them by the pool, though.
Yes. Yeah. And that's part of the reason that scene seemed to be the point that the show was trying to get to, which makes me feel like the dog is not going to come back and bite her, no pun intended, that it's going to come back on the plot, in a way. But maybe it does. I mean, you make a really good point about the dog being chipped or something. And then we get to the end of the episode. We have Allie moving out. Now, Coop is abducted, but aren't the kids on the sofa watching a movie? I wish I'd been able to. I could not.
Yes, I believe so.
I couldn't place the movie. So, I mean, it might be important. I'll try to track it down for next week. But because I've been trying to call out all the movie references here. But yeah, I mean, that's a weird thing. He's putting the garbage out or saying goodbye to Allie. That happens very quickly, by the way, right? He says goodbye to Allie. She drives away, and then they immediately pull him off the street.
They were waiting for their chance.
And I guess the kids are just hanging in the house and be like, I don't know, Dad never came back inside the house. I guess, did he go out for drinks with Allie and just never came back again? Maybe they're just going to have a quick talk with him and deposit him back in front of the house and he can just walk back inside. I would assume.
They're also self-involved. They might not even notice he's gone.
They're just happy that he's not there. So any theories? Do you have a theory as to who that might be? You think
it feels like this is Ashe related.
Oh, it's definitely Ashe related. Do you think it's Ashe's henchmen who can make people disappear? Or do you think it's the feds who are going to say, like, look, we know what's up. We've been following Ashe and you need to be like our inside man.
Hey, maybe it's Liv.
She's like, I got a solution. She pulls the baklava off. It's her. She's been a government agent the whole time. There you go.
I don't know why the feds would go straight to kidnapping. I think they would maybe just meet and, ring the doorbell.
This is a good point. You know what? You make a very good point. But you know what, though? Okay. I actually did think this out. I was going to say, you make a good point. They could just be like, we need to talk to you. Let's go have coffee. Or just like corner him on the street and be like, come here with us. And then talking to him and threatening him. But I was thinking maybe they are doing this because they're afraid that Ashe is watching Coop and they're looking for like a nondescript time to just, hoover him up. I didn't even think about the Hoover connection there, but and then have the threaten him in some way and then pop him back on the street again.
Maybe.
Because if they meet with him in the city or at any time in broad daylight, come to our offices and we need to talk to you, then Ashe's alarm might be raised, right? That's my guess. All right, Sona. Well, I guess we'll know. We'll probably know very soon because we have only 2 episodes left of the show. And honestly, still don't. This is a positive as far as me watching the show. I have no idea what the end game of the season is. So I'm curious for sure. I'm not thinking they're executing at the top level, but I'm still very intrigued, of course, as we continue to talk about the show. And yeah, only 2 more weeks. So we'll know soon enough.
There you go.
And then Cape Fear. Sona, are you looking forward to Cape Fear?
I am. I remember seeing that movie in the theater with you years and years, decades ago, I guess is more accurate.
Yeah, like 30 years ago. And on the one hand, Kim had not seen that yet, the trailer, and that showed at the beginning of one of these episodes. And I was like, oh, it looks great. Like the trailer looks really creepy. And Javier Bardem playing a psychopath, always a recipe for a good formula, given his reputation. He won an Academy Award for that. So that's all great. Amy Adams, big fan. Patrick Wilson, big fan as well. Montclair native, Patrick Wilson. So all that is great to see in the trailer. But I'm like, how many episodes is this? 8, 9? Does Cape Fear need to be 8 or 9 hours long? I don't know, but I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out.
It looks great. It just might be very slow going. Possibly. See. All right, Sona. Thank you again. We'll know a lot more next week. And if we have a crossover event with the other podcasters, we'll announce it here in the pod very soon. So you'll all be informed. All right, Sona. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.